A Shot in the Dark by Silverpup. Chapter 38. You were named for the spring.
Spring is the rebirth of the world after a ruthless death at the hand of winter.
His father, Adar, father of mine, the one who granted me life, had explained when he had asked about the meaning.
It is the start of a new age, a new beginning for all. It is my favorite season because it represents hopes and dreams. That is why I named you for it, Ar.
Thranduil. The vigorous spring. Even his nickname. Ar, sunlight, my sunshine, my sunrise, my sunset, the light of my life, was a part of it in some manner.
You are the light that guides me, Thranduil,
his father had told him as he brushed back his hair to settle a goodbye. Gwan, the part you're leaving me behind again. Kiss on his forehead.
Never forget that.
You never did. His father had named him for hope, because that was what he had been to Orfer, the high tree, the one who rises like the trees, a father who would always overshadow him in some way. Then, he was the hope and dreams for a new age, a new generation. When naming his own son, he had gone with a simpler meaning. Legolas, a green leaf, the fresh green leaf of spring, because he had simpler hopes. He named his son after the new leaf that was blown about but never fell, in hopes that his child would be just as strong. You would never burden Legolas with your dreams and ambitions, as your father did. His father had been a better soul than him. Orfer had been kind and wise, Beleg, great and mighty, strong in spirit, and had loved the people with everything he had. He never got angry, and was always quick to forgive his enemies. Hatred, Delu, spiteful, full of hate, was something he could not understand. His father had just been too good to ever despise anyone, unlike you, who could hate so easily and freely. Legolas was the same in some ways. He never hated anyone, not really, even if he mistrusted them. It was not in his nature to be so spiteful. He could rage and fight and bear a grudge, but he could never slit the throat of his foe's wife in front of him while he watched on helplessly. He could never watch a kingdom burn to ashes while the people screamed for mercy. He did not know what it was like to burn with a need, bar, desire, obsession, a craving you cannot deny, to kill and destroy because it was the only way to fill the aching void inside. You are so very thankful for this, because it is not something you would ever want for your son. He was unlike, void, abyss, alone in this, his father and son. He was not a noble soul who was beloved by all for his compassion and wisdom. His people respected him for his strength and protection. The outsiders looked at him with unease and mistrust, and his cousins regarded him with bewilderment and scorn. The only one who ever looked at him as if he hung the moon and stars was his precious child. None of it bothered him, though. He did not care about the world or the people in it. The only ones who ever mattered, Iar, blood, my kin, my family, had loved him, and that was enough. His differences made his ability to understand his father difficult. Even as a child, he did not understand Odofer's desire to sit with his men during meals like they were equal, or to visit the cities of men and dwarves for pleasure. He cared so very much for others that he would put them above himself in every way, small or large. He was even willing to die in order to protect the people of Middle-earth from any sort of harm. You hate him. You hate them the most for this reason alone. His lack of understanding had never changed, even centuries later. The halfling, Filigud, small bird, always fluttering around, so delicate and easy to break, was much like Orfer. He loved his dwarves. He loved his fools. Had Hodrim, dwarves, fools, pests, unbreakable, to the point of dying for them. And it did not matter if they hated him back. He was willing to walk into death's arms just to save them. It was also irrational. You admire it, though, because it is not something you yourself can do. That was the reason he agreed to the alliance. Not because he honestly cared about Sauron or the halfling, but because he wanted to understand. He wanted to understand how they could care so much with so little cause. Maybe if you understand it, you can forgive the world for stealing your father from you.
Bilbo blinked slowly as he stared up at the dwarf leaning over him. Hello, Nori. You look like crap. Behold my fierce observational skills. Nori, run through by a spear, his blood forming an ocean at his feet, snorted and rolled his eyes. Thanks, Smuggler. You look quite ashen yourself. I think I've seen corpses with better coloring. Careful, your jealousy is showing, he retorted as he closed his eyes and rubbed his face. Am I still dreaming? Are you real? Nori clucked his tongue as he gently hauled the hobbit up into a sitting position. Now don't beat yourself up over this. A lot of people tend to dream of my charm itself. Just don't tell Thorin. I don't want to endure another of his tantrums. He opened his eyes again and squinted at the dwarf kneeling in front of him. Nori? Are you really here? I think we had this conversation already, the thief said as he furrowed his brows and looked over the hobbit. What is wrong with you? Did you hit your head? You died in my dreams, he explained, slowly blinking a few times. You all died there, just like the first time I was alive. Or is this my first time alive? I can't remember anymore. Nori stared at him for a moment with unblinking green eyes. Then he snarled something low and foul in his mother tongue before rising swiftly to his feet in one motion. In contrast to his words, the hand that helped Bilbo to his feet was kind and firm. He even steadied the hobbit when he wavered, and caught him when he almost collapsed to the ground once more. "Oh there! Easy now, burglar, just lean on me for the moment," the dwarf ordered as he forced Bilbo to rest on his shoulder. He sagged willingly into the warm body next to him and inhaled the scent of leather, smoke, ash, and dirt. "What were you rolling around in?" he muttered into the dwarf's shoulder. "Not rolling, climbing," Nori corrected as he began to drag him out the door and out of his cell. "I'm digging, lots of digging. I don't know how Bolfer and Biffer can live as miners. I was at it for half a day and I never want to do it again." "You'd make a horrible miner. You would get bored or annoyed too easily and would end up pushing someone into a hole," he pointed out, rolling his eyes. Nori chuckled. "You know me so well." Bilbo hummed and glanced around the dark and empty halls. "Where is everybody? Are we late for something?" "Yeah, our escape," the thief mumbled as he hauled the hobbit along. "This rescuing business is tough. Try not to get into the habit of being captured, okay?" He scoffed, pushed himself off of the dwarf, and then flew against the wall. "Nonsense! I'm not a damsel in distress. Give me a sword. I can fight." "You threatened yourself through tripping down the stairs," Nori retorted dryly. He calmly reached over and yanked the hobbit back to his side by his elbow. "Stay close to me until we reach the others. It'd be a waste if you died now." He pouted and elbowed his companion in the side. "I won't fall down the stairs." "Of course you wouldn't," the dwarf agreed far too easily. "That's right," he mumbled and rubbed at his eyes with his free hand. "I'm so tired. Why am I so tired? I don't think I've been sleeping enough, Nori." The thief clucked his tongue as he paused and tilted his head to the side. "You're gonna sleep when we get out. Now be quiet for a moment. I'm trying to listen." Bilbo blinked and tilted his head to the side too. When he listened closely, he could hear the faint rumble of running feet. "Is someone coming to meet us?" "Not quite," Nori replied, and then pulled him along down the hall. He followed along without complaint as the dwarf led him through the almost maze-like corridors. He didn't know how his friend knew where to go. Everything about the halls looked the same to him. "Horrible architect," he scoffed to himself, rolling his eyes. "My father would be appalled." "What are you talking about?" the thief muttered as he shook his head. "We need to get you to Oin soon." "Oin?" he repeated. Eaten alive by a monster, his screams still echo in his ears. Slowly. "Is he alive too?" Nori growled. "Mahal's balls! That sounds like a drink. Is it like ale? Or maybe spirits? It's not wine, is it?" Nori didn't reply, but the grip around his elbow tightened even more. Eventually, they found an exit to all the corridors in a flight of stairs. With Nori's help, they made it down the steep steps without too much difficulty. When they reached the bottom, he was surprised to find another dwarf and an elf waiting for them. "Oh, Feely," he said, feeling his heart soften. "I'm so glad to see you. I thought you died with your brother again. I'm glad that didn't happen." Feely raised his brows from where he stood among a group of dead orcs. In each hand he held a blade and looked to be covered in dirt and blood. "What is he talking about?" "I don't know. I think he hit his head," Nori explained as he dragged Bilbo along to shove him on the prince. "He may have also lost his mind thanks to Sauron. Either way, we need to get it to Oin." "Prince Legolas," the hobbit greeted as he looked up at the silent elf watching them with his narrowed eyes. "You look like your father when you glare like that. You shouldn't do it. Your daddy is pretty, but he has the personality of a rock. You don't want to be like that." home. Feely groaned while Legolas kept staring with one brow raised high in obvious judgment. Is that another drink? Like Mahal's balls? He wondered as he looked over to Nori. Can I try them? Does Dwalin have some? Wait, is he still alive too? Feely groaned again while Nori closed his eyes and looked to be counting to 10 in his head. He felt a bit offended by that. With Bilbo, one had to at least start at 30. Bilbo, everyone is still alive, Feely explained quietly as he looked into the hobbit's eyes with his own, empty of all life and fire and fixed on Keely because he was his brother's protector even in the end. Blue Bear. They're waiting for us outside the gates. Do you understand? We came to rescue you from Mordor. We came to take you home to Erebor. Home? He repeated, blinking a few times. But my home is a snug hole in the ground filled with familiar books and worn-down quilts, a small campfire filled with laughter and deep voices that comfort him in the night, a broken city haunted by the whispers of those who came before, blue eyes and a crooked smile that makes his heart melt. Yeah, Bilbo! What is wrong with him? We're losing him again. He did this to me earlier when I first found him, but I still don't know how to stop him out of it. He is very ill. We must make haste before it gets even worse. Feely, he said quietly, interrupting the chatter as he looked back into the prince's eyes. I don't think I have a home anymore. I think I lost it. Feely's eyes grew dark, midnight eyes and unfair accusations and the sting of betrayal and why? And his mouth pulled down into a snarl that made him look like the fierce warrior king he would one day become. No, Bilbo, you do have a home, the blonde reassured quietly as he tightened his grip on the hobbit's shoulders. And we're going to take you back to it now. He followed silently as the two dwarves and single elf led him through the unknown fortress. Legolas led them with Nori at the back while Feely stayed with him in the middle. The prince kept a firm hand locked around his wrist the entire time as if he was a child who would wander off if left unsupervised. Bilbo was beginning to understand how Keely must have felt all his life with Feely as an older brother. Where are we? He asked as his mind began to clear up. His head still hurt, and some of his memories were still foggy, but he could at least think a bit clearer. Mordor! Sauron kidnapped you, remember? Feely replied quietly. He nodded, and some of his loose hair fell into his eyes, surprising him. When had his braids come undone? Yes, he sent his wraiths to get me. They tried not to kill me, but I don't think they did a very good job of it. The prince scoffed. No, they didn't. They shouldn't have bothered. We're the only ones who can keep you alive, Nori commented. Where are the wraiths? He wondered, glancing to the blonde at his side. Where is Sauron? Why isn't anyone here? They're all currently at the Black Gates, Legolas replied calmly from the lead. My father, King Thorin, and Lord Dane are currently leading an attack against it with their armies. He blinked slowly as his mind struggled to grasp such an idea. But how? Their armies were practically decimated during the Battle of the Five Armies. Uncle hired some help, Billy explained, flashing him a brief smirk before turning his attention back to their surroundings. He hired mercenaries and the men of Gondor and Rohan. Uncle Dane even got some more troops to join us from the Iron Mountains. Bilbo still felt lost. Why? Surely they don't think they have a chance at breaching the Black Gates. Behind him, Nori sighed loudly and lightly tapped the top of Bilbo's head with his knuckles. They're not trying to breach it, burglar. They're just trying to draw all the attention to it so we have more time to sleep in and save you. He frowned and looked over his shoulder to stare at the thief. This is all a rescue attempt? For me? Don't be so surprised, Feely chided, squeezing his wrist. Do you really think we just let you skip off to Mordor with only 3 strangers for protection? They weren't strangers, he began to argue, only to stop short as he recalled his 3 lost comrades. Oh, your highness, I have to tell you about Tauriel. I know, the elf replied, his voice never faltering, even as his shoulders grew tense. We found her and Beorn. They're alive, but barely. They suffered great injuries, ones that cannot be fixed even by the strongest healer. His dream memory of Tauriel's broken body flashed through his mind, and he struggled to contain a sob. And Bard, is he the same as them? Alive, but only barely. Feely explained, licking his lips and glancing away. I don't think he'll ever walk again, Bilbo. Bilbo squeezed his eyes shut and shuddered as he envisioned a bed-bound Bard. Oh no, poor Bard. They all stayed behind for me.
They told us, Nori admitted quietly. Well, Tariel did. She was the only one able to talk at that time. We sent them back to Markwood for healing. No word yet if any of them kicked the bucket.
But I'm sure they'll all pull through, reassured Feely as he cast a glare at the thief. They're strong. Had to be to stay with you for so long without losing their minds. I think I'm losing my mind, he mumbled as he opened his eyes and glanced back to the prince. How did you three get in wherever we are? Barad-dûr, filled in Legolas. Went through Ered Luthwi, climbed it for the most part, then used the abandoned tunnels when we could, the younger prince explained. How? Nori snorted. We're dwarves, Bilbo. We got the Nakor stones and mountains. And why only you three? He wondered on, rubbing his forehead. Nori, I can understand, but why are you here, Feely? Prince Legolas. After Nori, I'm the best at moving quietly, the prince explained before pausing and shaking his head. Well, no, actually Ori is, but Dori and Nori wouldn't let him come. You're lucky I let you come, Princeling, the thief retorted, kicking the younger dwarf in the back of the knee. I came on Tariel's request, Legolas added, glancing over his shoulder to give Bilbo a look. She's very worried about you, Master Baggins. I took a part of your soul and devoured it. He shuddered and leaned into the dwarf, guiding him. She has good reason to. Bilbo was surprised at how far they managed to travel before encountering the few orcs that remained in the fortress. Legolas noted them first and made a hand signal to the dwarves before cocking back an arrow. Before the prince even released it, he found himself shoved down against a wall behind the elf. Bilbo, stay right here next to the prancing prince, Nori ordered, twirling a thin and bloody knife in his hand. Legolas made a noise in his throat as his arrow hit an orc straight in the face. For the last time! That is not my name! Okay, the dwarf deadpanned as he stalked off with Feely to deal with the rest of the orcs that had finally noticed them. Bilbo shook his head and glanced up at the scowling elf. Don't take it personal. He talks like that to everyone. I'm surprised he's still alive then, the prince muttered as he released another arrow. But at least he's not as bad as the other one. He threatened to disembowel me if I didn't bring you three back safely. Dwalin? He guessed as he watched Feely decapitate an orc. Legolas shook his head. No, the old one. Think it was his brother. Balin? Yes, him! The prince turned and made a face at the hobbit as he released another arrow without looking. It, of course, hit its target dead in the eye. The detail he went into was a bit excessive. He blinked and leaned his head back against the cold wall. Huh. You must have caught him in a bad mood. Balin is usually more kind, the elf guessed. Subtle, he corrected, thinking back to his he dies alone and forgotten in a cold tomb. Why did I ever let him go? Why? Friend, the blonde prince snorted. Didn't think dwarves knew that word. He pushed back his thoughts firmly. Now was not the time to fall into his madness again. Some do. Thorin knows what dazed is, but he thinks it's something people should show him, and not vice versa. Oh, like my father! That explains why they don't get along, the elf said airily as he lazily shot an orc through the throat. That pulled a rusty laugh from him. It hurt his chest to do so, but it was nice to be able to laugh. He couldn't recall when he last did. His dry, apathetic laugh at least drew a smirk from Legolas. The look made his face look less delicate and a bit more roguish. Once the orcs were dealt with, they continued on until they came to an empty tower with large windows. Legolas looked out and scanned the land, before turning back to them with a nod. Then, before he could ask what it was for, the elven prince braced one hand on the windowsill and hoisted himself out of the window. I hope you three aren't expecting me to do that, he commented, flashing the two dwarfs a look. Feely smiled crookedly as Nori stalked off to the windows next. Sorry, I know you don't like high places, but this is the best way to get out. He just kept staring at the prince. Really? Jumping out a window in a tower is your best escape plan? Feely simply shrugged. Come on, Margaret, your turn now. Nori called as he stared out the window at the ground below. The prancing prince leaning his way to catch you. How do you know he won't drop me? He grumbled as Feely pushed him over to the window. Or that I won't squish him. You weigh about as much as a mouse right now. I'm no expert, but I'm fairly certain that won't crush a full-grown elf. Nori deadpanned. But I'm pretty sure a dwarf would, the prince added with a wicked grin. Let's not test that, he pleaded as he tiptoed and looked out the window to the ground below. The drop was not as high as he had feared, but it was still certainly high enough to make him nauseous just by looking. Legolas waited on the ground below patiently with his arms stretched out in waiting. He sighed and looked back to his friends. Let's get this over with then. With Nori's help, he hoisted himself onto the windowsill and swung his legs over the edge. His hands began to sweat as he looked at the ground below, and he tried his best to ignore the fear that twisted within his stomach. If I die, please make it sound a bit more heroic than this, he said to the two dwarves behind him without taking his eyes off the ground below. Feely snorted while Nori patted him on the shoulder. I'll make it sound better than the fight with smoke, the thief promised, and then pushed him out the window. Bilbo took in a sharp breath as he suddenly went plunging down to the earth. The wind rushed past him so quickly that his eyes began to water and his ears began to ring. He felt like an eternity before he finally stopped falling, caught neatly in Legolas's arms as if he was nothing more than a child. Nori is a dead dwarf, he vowed to himself as the elf helped him to his feet. He swayed a bit but managed to keep himself from fainting or throwing up whatever still lingered in his stomach. I'm going to stab him for that, he declared quietly as he wrapped his arms around his stomach. Legolas chuckled. I'll lend you the knife if you need one. I might take you up on that, he admitted, glancing up to watch as the dwarves took their turns leaping out of the window. To his annoyance and relief, they both landed on their feet without harm. Enjoy your trip? Nori asked with a perfectly straight face that won him all their card games. I'm telling Nori you secretly miss his hugs, he promised, glaring at the thief. The dwarf didn't even flinch. You're going to do that, but I don't think he'll be very interested in hugging me when he has you to mother over. Or did you forget about the letters you left for all of us? Letters? He repeated, blinking. What letters? What was the thief talking about? We'll talk about those later, Feely ordered, flashing a look at the other dwarf. For now, we need to move. Bilbo, we'll have to climb the mountain to get out of here. It should take us most of the night. Do you think you can handle it? The hobbit shrugged and glanced up at the fortress that had held him prisoner. Does it matter? I don't really have a choice here, do I? We'll help you when you get tired, the young prince promised, his Durin blue eyes softening. I'll even carry you myself if I must. He shrugged again. I can walk for now. My legs are not a problem. It's my soul and mind that are. Let's move then before we're noticed again, Legolas ordered as his eyes scanned the area. Bilbo nodded and followed his friends as they continued on their way to freedom.